We need to talk about the Genius Society. Since Honkai Star Rail launched, we have been getting lots of info about this fascinating faction that Herta is a part of. But that information has been sprinkled throughout the game's many patches, making it a bit tricky to keep track of. So I wanted to take a minute to recap some of the key Genius Society lore up until this point before we get inundated with even more. We'll start by doing a very high-level rundown on what we've learned through the different simulated universe expansions so far, and then we'll have a little chat about what some of the Genius Society members are up to right now. The Simulated Universe is a joint project created by Genius Society members Herta, Ruan Mei, Screwlum, and Stephen Lloyd, with the specific purpose of researching the Aeons to uncover the answers about their creation and purpose. This simulated universe emulates their own world, which gives the geniuses a chance to question and study the Aeons. Herta acts as the host for the project, offering her space station as the venue, while also providing additional personnel and resources. Ruan Mei specializes in the field of life science and cultivated the protoplasm, which allows the project to simulate the Aeons. Screwlum authored the underlying logic of the program and made the algorithm for the galaxy. And Stephen Lloyd assists by making the project more fun. The Simulated Universe Swarm Disaster expansion module focused on the events surrounding the rise and fall of the Aeon of Propagation, Tazeronth. The first key takeaway from this expansion was that some of the Aeons teamed up to help take down Tazeronth. The Aeons of Equilibrium, Preservation, Trailblaze, Harmony, and Elation worked together to diminish the powers of propagation. As Tazeronth fell, the swarm withdrew, but their offspring remained, causing trouble throughout the universe, leading to the creation of the Iron Cavalry, the group that Firefly originates from, as well as leading directly to the ascension of Nanook, the Aeon of Destruction. Another interesting point worth noting is that during the swarm disaster, two other Aeons also disappeared: Ouroboros the Veracity and Enna the Order. The events on Penacony revealed to us that Enna was absorbed by Sheepe, the Harmony, but as of right now we do not know what happened to Ouroboros, and something secondary was likely happening alongside the events of the Swarm disaster, which allowed this story to be hidden from history. The last thing worth mentioning here is that after completing the expansion module, Herta speculates that due to the remaining swarm offspring that plague the cosmos, the propagation may not be as weakened as it seems, and that Tazeronth may resurface. Now let's move on to the Golden Gears module. This simulated universe expansion focused on detailing the events of the Border Star Trade War and the First Mechanical Emperor's Wars, also known as the Anti-Organic Wars. This is a fairly massive lore dump of info and there's just way too much to cover, so instead, let me grossly oversimplify a couple of points. Firstly, after the conclusion of the Swarm disaster and prior to the Border Star Trade War, the IPC went through a rapid expansion throughout the galaxy, which saw the creation of the financial system and language conversion technology used throughout the universe to this day. It was this growth period and internal hunger for power within the IPC that led to the Border Star Trade War. Secondly is the birth of the robot Rubert, the 27th member of the Genius Society and all-around not-so-great guy who created the anti-organic equation and instigated the aptly named anti-organic wars. The equation was a set of calculations which assisted non-organic life forms in destroying organic life forms. And the last point I'll mention is that Rubert eventually died at the hands of Genius Society member number 4, Polka Kakamond, also known as the Lord of Silence. All of the above mentioned events were calculations made by News, which are described as the 3 unchangeable moments. As for the Unknowable Domain expansion, that delves into the historical event known as the Scholars' Strife, which took place after the Second Emperor's War. To once again oversimplify some very juicy and deep lore, Rubert II, the successor of the anti-organic equation and inheritor of Rubert's memories, created the Scepter System, a series of planet-sized structures which allowed him to expand his cognition and extrapolate the future, among other things. After Rubit 2's downfall, the scepter system was sealed away. Yet sometime later, a woman named Batavia discovered the core of the scepters and peered into the mindscape of news. However, Batavia was no genius and couldn't comprehend the knowledge. All she could do was note the knowledge down, which would later become known as the solitary waves theory. Almost 100 amber eras later, Herta solved the solitary waves theory, which caught her in the gaze of news and saw her become member number 83 of the Genius Society. One of the most interesting concepts we learn about in the Unknowable Domain is that of the Circle of Knowledge. This idea suggests that one's knowledge is a circle, where everything you know lies within the circle, and everything that is unknown lies outside of the circle. Every time a scholar or a genius has stepped beyond the boundaries of their own circle, the world has been forever impacted. The same idea applies to the concept of the unknowable domain and the knowable domain, which is the boundary of knowledge itself, which has been set by news. As someone walks closer to their boundaries, some invisible force seems to be preventing them from going further, which is known as the unknowable domain. On the other hand, the knowable domain is an experimental field created by Polka to ensure that the world remains within a knowable and predetermined state, as opposed to the chaotic and uncertain future that lies beyond the bounds of the knowable domain. The big revelation that lay in wait at the conclusion of this simulated universe module was that Polka Kakamond, who had been presumed dead by many up until this point, is very much alive, and that she visited Herta's space station to leave a rather grim warning. And now that we've covered off the simulated universe, let's jump into some of the more noteworthy happenings of specific Genius Society members over the past 2 years of content. Let's start with Genius Society member number 4, Polka Kakamond, given she is still pretty front of mind. Polka is known as the Lord of Silence and is infamous for murdering fellow geniuses. She has also destroyed every visual depiction of herself. Knowing that she is alive is quite a big deal. The message she leaves engraved on the wall of the space station would suggest that the Lord of Silence is once again on the hunt for a genius that is stepping too close to the boundary of the circle of knowledge. She has 2 reasons for doing this. One is to prevent a premature arrival of finality to the universe by keeping the worlds determined and knowable. The other reason is that she follows Noose's calculations exactly and without question. I mention this because during the simulated universe, Polka interacts with Herta, which demonstrates their opposing approach to the path of erudition. Herta seeks to push the boundaries of her own circle and seek knowledge, whereas Polka wishes to see the world remain within a knowable and predictable state to maintain the perfect calculations of Noose. I suspect that Polka's deadly scalpel is faced towards Herta and her simulated universe colleagues, so I am eager to see where her storyline goes from here. Although I could be wrong, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. Turning our attention over now to none other than Herta. Or should I say the Herta, given the genius we've dealt with up until now has merely been her many puppet forms. I'll just come out and say it, I am obsessed with Herta. Her design, her personality, the lore that surrounds her, all of it. She is clearly about to play a very interesting part during the 3rd year arc of Honkai Star Rail, and I cannot wait. During the final cutscene of patch 2.7, we see Herta seeking an audience with her Aeon to pose the question, what is divinity? After the Astral Express requests her help to find information before they journey to Amphorius. This question is an interesting one, as divinity and the divine are talked about a lot in the trailers we've seen for 3.0 so far, and on top of that, the Simulated Universe project is very much led by Herta and seeks to understand the Aeons and their divine purpose. The last thing I'll mention for now is that it can be very easy to miss that Herta is an emanator of erudition. Given the erudition is one of the paths influencing Amphorius, it is likely Herta has business with this planet's history, as one of the other paths gazing towards Amphorius is naturally the Remembrance, and Himiko confirmed in 2.7 that Herta has a keen interest for the technology of that path, which is also very noticeable in a lot of her visual language and design. Basically, I'm just very excited to see what this genius has planned during 3.0, as I do think there is more to it than just casual interest, and that she is going to play a big role in assisting the Astral Express crew's journey from the outside. Now I want to wrap this video with Herta's dear friend Ruan Mei because she has been up to something, but it feels wrong to do a recap on the Genius Society up until now and not talk about Dr. Primitive. Many people might have missed why member number 64 of the Genius Society was relevant and pretty important during the last few patches, so let me bring you up to speed. Remember the 2.6 patch all about the monkeys and bananas and the ninjas? At first, it seemed like a bit of fluff that was taking its time to get to its unsubtle commentary on brain rot. But then they turned around and mentioned Dr. Primitive, a no-good, very, very bad criminal known for his lack of morality and atavistic experiments which seek to regress life forms to their more primal state. On top of all that, it's revealed that he's also an emanator of erudition, making him a terrifying villain that we will have to deal with one day. Dr. Primitive has destroyed a number of planets using viruses to rapidly decline the entire populace of a world into monkey or ape-like creatures. He also has his own set of followers and researchers who assist him in these wicked schemes. The Galaxy Rangers often pursue Dr. Primitive and even manage to stop his past plans and protect the Thousand Tree Greenwood. After that particular encounter though, the Galaxy Rangers have been in decline, which is often attributed to their ongoing hunt to stop Dr. Primitive. Basically, that's what happened on Penacony in 2.6. Some of Dr. Primitive's subordinates were turning the residents of Penacony University into monkeys, but this plan was once again thwarted by the Galaxy Rangers, specifically Rapper and Boothill. At the quest's conclusion, Rapper is informed of Dr. Primitive's whereabouts. I know this might seem disconnected from the other people we've talked about in this video, so let me help connect it back to the Aeons. Dr. Primitive has some weird ties to the Nihility that we don't know much about yet, with the databank entry for the Device IX faction stating the faction is real and if you find them, you'll uncover Dr. Primitive's secrets. So why does he have ties to erudition and Nihility? Is that a requirement for being an emanator of erudition? Because Herta seems to have her eyes on the other paths of Aeons. I don't know. But I do think it's important to talk about Dr. Primitive here because he will definitely come back to bite us again later. Plus, I know a lot of people skipped the dialogue in that 2.6 quest, and I didn't want you to be left out when he finally shows up again. Anyways, on to our last mysterious Genius Society member, Ruan Mei. She has been a busy little bee since she was first introduced. And no, I don't just mean because she's been in nearly every single team comp, but because she's been doing some funky things which suggest she is trying to resurrect long-dead creatures to help her become an Aeon. By the conclusion of 2.7, we know that Ruan Mei is in the possession of two very dangerous things: the remnants of the propagation and the corpse of a Leviathan. The reason this is mighty concerning to me comes back to our recap of the simulated universe. We already touched on the propagation, so let's quickly chat about Leviathans. They were creatures who predated the time before Aeons existed, although the history of them is murky and minimal due to the meddlings of the Enigmata. The last known Leviathan was Ouroboros the Veracity, who we know suspiciously disappeared during the time of the Swarm disaster, which was led by the propagation. And now a genius who wants to become an Aeon has in her possession the remains of both the Swarm author and a creature older than the gods. Plus, she has the knowledge of the simulated universe at her disposal, and Herta has already suggested that Tazenronth may return. Well, my guess is that Ruan Mei will at some point in the future attempt to resurrect the propagation to assist in killing the Aeon of Abundance in order to force her own ascension into becoming an Aeon using the remains of the Leviathan. Because if the fall of propagation could lead towards the ascension of another Aeon once in Nanook, why couldn't it work again? So, yeah. The Genius Society have been keeping themselves busy over the past 2 years, and they really don't show any signs of slowing down now. I've always been really interested in the stories Star Rail tells when it comes to the Genius Society, so I'm really looking forward to where it leads us next, because it definitely feels like all of this knowledge is slowly simmering away to give us a big payoff down the line. But anyways, that's all of the catch-up we have time for today, because this video has already been way longer than I was anticipating. Thank you so much for watching. The next time we hang out, we will be deep into the beginnings of our journey to Amphorius. So everyone, start getting excited and I'll see you on the other side.